Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our second in a series of Lunch and Learn webinars. I'm so grateful that you've joined us. My name is Megan Liesfeld, and I serve as the Executive Director for United Way of Lincoln and Lancaster County. Today, I'm joined by 5 Executive Directors who lead agencies that United Way is honored to partner with. Each of them will introduce themselves in just a moment. To frame our conversation today, Mia is going to share a slide that illustrates the priority areas through which United Way invests donor support back into our partner organizations, and in turn, those in our community with whom they work. As you can see, the 3 primary focus areas are education, income, and health. Today, we're going to be particularly focusing in on the work that is being done in the income pillar. Support for programs that offer food, safe shelter, workforce development, and increased financial capability help to ensure that families and individuals in our community have the opportunity to achieve economic security. I'm so eager to hear from the directors that have joined us today, and for you all to have the opportunity to ask questions and get to know more about the important work they're doing in our community. As we move through the conversation today, please put any questions for our guest speakers into the Q&A box, and we will ask those at the end of our roundtable discussion. Thank you to each of the directors for giving your time to share with us today. Without further ado, I'd like to ask each of our guests to go ahead and provide a brief introduction of themselves and their organization. Let's start with Christine Funk with Center for People in Need.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. The Center for People in Need has a number of programs, 3 of which are funded in part by United Way. We're probably one of the largest food distributors in the city. About 25% of the food bank's food comes through our doors. And so that's the largest program that United Way supports us with. The other 2 include HOP, which stands for People Obtaining Prosperity. And that's a program funded by a couple private foundations to pay for people's tuition to Southeast Community College. And then we also then provide some wraparound services. And one of those this year will be helping with books and supplies, thanks to United Way's support. And the other program is our English language learning class that we have support from.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thanks.
Next up will be Vi C with Community Action.
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon. As was already mentioned, I am Vi C, Executive Director of Community Action Partnership of Lancaster and Saunders counties. It's a very long name, so we invite you all to simply call us Community Action. Community Action empowers people living in poverty to reach economic stability. Last year, Community Action's 18 programs served over 22,000 individuals in Lancaster and Saunders County within 4 focus areas: early childhood education, homelessness prevention, hunger relief, and economic stability. United Way supports 9 of those 17 programs, and 7 of those programs are under the income pillar. So we are obviously very thankful to United Way for their support, and we're thankful to all of you for supporting United Way. I'm going to very quickly mention those 7 programs and with a 1-sentence descriptor. So I invite you to visit our website to learn more, or to certainly contact me for more information. One of our more visible programs is the Gathering Place. We all love the Gathering Place. It's a soup kitchen located at 15th and E Streets. It serves hot meals 7 nights a week. And since mid-March, we have been providing grab-and-go meals at our front gate. The number of guests each evening has doubled. We're now serving an average of 170 individuals every evening picking up that meal. One of Community Action's largest programs is our Emergency Services Program. That program provides rent and utility payment assistance. And let me tell you that during the month of September, this program received 1,800 requests for assistance, so huge need. We have a small program called Tenant Support Services funded by United Way that provides education relating to tenant law in Nebraska. It focuses on eviction prevention and landlord-tenant mediation. So also very busy right now. Last month, 129 households were served. Our supportive housing program provides intensive case management and rent subsidy for 39 families who were homeless and now are living in their own home. Financial coaching program provides 6 weeks of financial educational classes supported by 6 months of coaching to support attainment of personal financial goals. A new cohort of 25 participants is launched 8 times a year. And so right now, we project having about 200 participate in that program over the next year. And then finally, you're happy to hear me say finally, right? Community Action has 2 matched savings programs. They both target a slightly different participant, but both of them have the same goal of providing financial education and an incentive to save for the purchase of a major asset. Those major assets would include reliable transportation, post-secondary education, home purchase, and launch of a small business. The participants' savings, when they make the asset purchase, is matched on a 2-to-1 or 4-to-1 basis. So for example, an individual saving $1,000 to purchase a new auto would receive a match of $4,000, which is a huge assistance and boost. And again, visit our website for more information, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Vi. Next up is Monica Zinke.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us over your lunch hour. We're happy to have you with us and to provide some information about what we do. My name, as Megan said, is Monica Zinke. I'm the Executive Director of Fresh Start. Fresh Start is a transitional program for women experiencing homelessness. It's a communal living environment, and they can stay with us for up to a year. So it gives them more time to really settle in and hopefully, have time to take a breath and do first things first and build a better foundation for success when they leave. Our target population is women without children, and we fall into that income pillar due to the basic needs aspect of what we're providing, along with the case management, advocacy, and support that we offer to everyone. And we only have the one program. We're kind of the opposite of Community Action. We have the one core program, and that's what's funded by the United Way.
Thank you, Monica. Tom Ronda.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Tom Ronda, and I'm the Executive Director at the Good Community Center. And through United Way, we have funding for our food program. Through our food program, we do food lines, which is more of every Monday and every Wednesdays, families can come and get perishable food from us. And that happens actually to be our largest program. So we have that as the top there. And then we also have a pantry that we call the Shopper's Choice Pantry. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we haven't been able to do a lot of that. So we've been utilizing our drive-through, both for perishables and non-perishables. But it's normally it's a shopper's choice. They'll come and pick out the foods that they want for their families. And then we also funded for basic and emergency needs. And through this section, we have several programs. One of the programs is our shopping floor, where we receive donations from the community. and individuals can come into our building and get anything that's on our shopping floor at free of charge. They can also receive things like layettes, new quilts that we make in our basement over here. And then through United Way, we also get funds for diapers. The ladies know they come together, put together some money for women in philanthropy, and we use those funds to buy diapers. And another section where we send those money to is through our grandparents' Christmas room. So we buy winter clothing, and grandparents from low-income families, when they come to get gifts for their children, for their grandkids, they can also get those new winter clothes. We also work with rent assistance, utility assistance, and another section that most people do not know is we also help with bus passes. So for individuals who do not have transportation, they can come to us and we can help them with transportation. And then one big section under this program also is the Middle East, North Africa Hope Project. And under this program, we support individuals, refugees and immigrants from the Middle East, various things, case management. We have several classes, English classes, citizenship classes. We have community health workers, health classes and all that good stuff. So basically we get 2 pods from United Way and a third one with women in philanthropy, and then we kind of put them everywhere where it's needed. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. And Suzanne Blue is our 5th panelist.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, and thanks very much for your interest in this important topic. I'm the longtime director of Matt Talbot Kitchen and Outreach. I've been there about 22 years. And Matt Talbot provides daily hunger relief, lunch and dinner 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We also provide housing assistance through a variety of programs, transitional sober living housing, permanent supportive housing called Housing First for chronically homeless, and then newer housing opportunities, rapid rehousing, kind of as a result of the federal funding come in through the CARES Act. So housing and case management has taken on a significant role at Matt Talbot, but we also offer our substance use counseling, evaluations for persons seeking treatment, pre-treatment programming for those who are waiting to get into treatment, and drug and alcohol education classes. Some of the basic needs services, our street outreach program, meeting people where they're at, providing basic needs there. We have still been offering throughout the pandemic shower and laundry services for our community's homeless, a mailing address for them, and then some outside services since the pandemic, just to try and keep people safe. But we did have to close our dining room, and I think we'll be talking about some of that a little bit later in the program. But United Way has been a tremendous support to Matt Talbot. We're so very grateful. They are supporting the food, part of the hunger relief efforts, and our transitional housing program, which is the case management and sober living for people experiencing homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. I want to just take a quick moment to thank you all again for taking time to share with everyone who had the opportunity to join us today. I know that there are a lot of people who are really eager to hear how things are going. You all have alluded to it already. The times have changed a lot in the last 8 months. A lot of what you've been doing, what you've in some instances been doing for over a decade may look really different right now. So I'm going to go ahead and move us into some of our prepared questions, but thank you again for spending your time with us and sharing with our community a bit more about how things are going right now for your organizations and those that you serve. So starting off, this first question, I'm going to ask first Chris and then Monica to answer. But what challenges are you seeing that are preventing the people that your organization serves from obtaining and maintaining financial stability? Chris, let's start with you if that's all right.
Sure. You know, we see a wide range. I think like all nonprofits, we see a very wide range of people, from single parent mothers to refugees who don't have English language as a primary language or have very little skill in that area, to people who have mental or physical disabilities. And they all have unique problems, but they all have a lot of things in common too. Low-wage jobs that don't allow them to meet their basic needs, jobs that don't have benefits, healthcare. Transportation is a big problem, particularly in Lincoln. If people lived out by where we are on North 27th between Cornhusker and Superior, and they worked at Bryan Hospital East, it would take them maybe 15, 20 minutes to drive there. If they had to take the Lincoln bus system, it would take them an hour and a half. And so it's really hard for people not to have a car and to really be functional. And that's a very expensive thing, as we all know. So there are a lot of challenges that all people seem to share who are struggling from week to week and month to month. But one of the things that we have, at least I've noticed in our programs that can make a difference are sometimes the smaller things. So the POP program that I mentioned before, where the tuition is being paid to Southeast Community College, SCC actually tells us that our POP students are really their most successful, or some of their very most successful. And part of that has to do, I think, to have their internet paid for, tuition. Of course, that's the main thing, but transportation, now books and supplies, and a lot of one-on-one support and coaching. And that really can make all the difference for people. And they also are able to have a plan, and they have people to talk to and work through those plans. Program, it's funded by the Department of Corrections, but we work with people who are just coming out of prison, and we have a variety of skill training like welding and forklift training and now CAD drawing, but there's a lot of one-on-one work and coaching and support for people. And many of the people coming out of corrections do not continue to call back to staff to just have someone to talk to and work through things. So I think I'm over my 3 minutes, but there's a lot of things in common that people have, and sometimes it can be the smaller things that can really make a difference.
Thank you. Monica, what challenges are you seeing that are preventing the people that your organization serves from obtaining and maintaining financial stability?
Well, the challenges that they're typically facing that have led them to Fresh Start are also obviously the things that they're still trying to overcome. And that includes, for our population anyway, what they report as the top challenges are substance abuse, health, particularly mental health, also some physical health concerns, and domestic violence, and then of course, either unemployment or underemployment. So those are some of the biggest barriers that they already have. And then they also have logistics, like Chris was saying, with transportation. We're located over in Havelock, and it's been a wonderful community for us. It's not easy on the bus to get to places from Havelock without taking more than one bus, unless you're going to kind of certain hub areas within Lincoln. So the logistics of that transportation really limits their other opportunities then for jobs, for services sometimes, or for getting services more than one a day because it takes so long to get there. They can't just book up all their appointments in this short amount of time and get everything taken care of, because it takes more time to get there on the bus and to do all those appointments. So the logistics of the financials and the transportation, coupled with that substance abuse, mental health, and domestic violence. And the last one that I want to touch on that isn't always the obvious one is one of the hardest challenges that they have to overcome is the one that's outside of their control. And that is all the stereotypes and stigmas that our population faces. Sadly and erroneously, there's a lot of negative stereotypes about each of those barriers I mentioned, about substance abuse and addiction, about mental health, about some chronic health conditions, about domestic violence, about the availability or about not working. And so our population has not just one stereotype to battle against, but if they are in recovery and a survivor of domestic violence and they're not working, they have to battle all the stigmas that are tied to those conditions, and that makes it a lot harder. So one of the challenges is really overcoming those stereotypes, and the challenge of finding the people that look past that stereotype and will give them a chance, look past their criminal history and will give them a chance, and not just stop at the stereotypes and stigmas that are there that only apply to a very small percent of the population that's battling any one of those issues. So I think that is often the hardest challenge, and it's the one that is outside of their control.
Thank you, Monica. I appreciate that. Our next question, and I would imagine the pandemic will probably influence how many of you answer this question, but what opportunities have you seen in your programs to better or differently serve program participants? And I'm going to start with Vi.
Well, this is just a great question. And I think without a doubt, not only our community of Lincoln, but of course, our nonprofit organizations have been so innovative relating to how we continue our services and how we meet the needs that we are all seeing, or if we're not seeing, we know are there. I want to talk about a couple. First of all, I want to do a shout out to Community Actions employees. Of the 17 programs that we operate, all of those programs very quickly were able to convert their services to a new model that for the most part included virtual services. Our one real challenge was our weatherization program. It's very hard to be in people's homes doing work right now. So that's a challenge that remains to be met. But relating to innovation, one of our largest programs is our early childhood education. We serve 421 children between the ages of 0 through 5 years of age. And they and their families were very used to being in classrooms every day, year-round, getting visits every week, and being in touch with multiple members of our staff. So like many preschools, like many schools, we converted to a virtual educational model in mid-March that we operated through mid-June. And a big shout out to all of our funding sources who were very generous in allowing us to think about new ways to serve and new services to add with their dollars. One of the things that our staff within Head Start, Early Head Start noticed that while we typically do not provide direct services like food boxes or educational materials for in the home or cleaning supplies, very quickly they realized that this was a huge need for those 400 families that were isolated and at an average of 50% of the federal poverty level, so very, very low income. Within weeks, that team organized drops to 170 families once a week that included all of those things that I mentioned. And I have to share that one of our great discoveries during this period was a very inexpensive, very easy to use app that allows you to schedule deliveries per your geographic area. So thanks to technology, which is the second thing that I want to mention, what has been an opportunity, is that Community Action has always valued technology as an opportunity to be more efficient. We have an IT manager, and we have an agency-wide IT committee that thinks about ways that we can utilize technology to be efficient. So as we reached mid-March, that team was very efficient in helping each program think about that conversion to virtual services. And just quickly, a couple of things that we really had to figure out, but now that we've mastered, and I think will continue to impact our ability to serve families going forward, even outside of COVID, includes not only Zooming meetings and classes, but the need to provide laptops or pads to those individuals or families who do not already have that connection. So we purchased a bit of a library of iPads with hotspots that we could loan to individuals to be able to participate in our financial well-being classes. We also quickly learned that we needed software to be able to receive signatures and very secure information that usually are tied with all of our applications and enrollment processes. So that certainly has also been implemented. And lastly, a really fun example, success story, I believe, is that within our Head Start centers, our 24 classrooms, we have 9 foster grandparents who typically spend about 20 hours a week in a very specific classroom with 8 children. So they're very attached, very bonded. And of course, because they are all over the age of 55, and many of them have chronic health situations, they were unable since March to connect with those children and those families. So beginning 2 weeks ago, they each had received an iPad and a link to their classroom. Some of the grandparents had never done email. Others, were very versed in technology, but for the first time 2 weeks ago, they all linked with their classroom. So they were able to reunite with those children. They're able to read stories. They're able to do one-on-one conversations with children that need that. And it was just very, very heartwarming to see Grandma Verna, who had never utilized a smartphone or a pad ever before, really say hello for the first time in 7 months to those 8 children. So lots of opportunity, and that opportunity obviously because of our generous funders like United Way.
Thank you, Vi. Those are some great stories of ways to turn our current situation into opportunities to serve differently. Suzanne, what opportunities have you seen in your programs to serve differently and maybe even better in some occasions?
Well, differently, certainly the to-go meals were new for us. For years since our inception, it was all about the dining room and people eating in. So it's been kind of interesting to see a lot of new faces, maybe folks that weren't comfortable coming in and staying to have a meal. And just coming in now to get their to-go meal and leave. And then those that, were kind of frequent diners and used the center more for just meeting space and a gathering with friends and such for just socialization, are not coming in like they used to. So we've still been very busy, but we've seen some dynamics change. We did some things like these outside services when the spring and summer months hit, brought in a hand washing station outside for our homeless guests so they could, keep their hands washed and help with the spread of the disease or the virus. And then like porta potties and misters and picnic tables and hand sanitizer and all those kinds of things, you know. And we have a large area grounds around the facility, so it did accommodate for that. And the people, our guests, were so appreciative, those who had no place to go, and it just provided for those basic needs when our dining room was closed. And then we were approached about helping to alleviate some overcrowding at the shelter and help during the virus to get people off of the streets and put people in hotels. And so again, something totally new. We had never done that before, didn't have a big program plan for doing that, but we started on May 1st and have put quite a few people in hotels and then applied for some funding to get people move more rapidly into permanent housing through the Federal CARES Act dollars that came to our community. So it's really been a wonderful opportunity out of this crisis that we've been in, because, you know, we are reducing the number of homeless, certainly unsheltered homeless, which is a huge part of our goal, our big vision to defeat hunger and homelessness. So that's really been a unique thing to see, and just modifying in a lot of ways, really being creative, thinking outside of the box, but we've still been able to do some education and the virtual means, I think, that Vi was referring to. I mean, we've all had to learn a lot and adapt, and there's some things I think that will stay with us after this is gone, fingers crossed. So.
Thank you, Suzanne. I just have to say really quickly before we move next into letting Christine answer the same question, how much gratitude I know that the community has for the many creative ways that you all have persisted in living out your missions. So just a brief thank you before we move to our next panelist. And I think Chris is having a little bit of difficulty with her internet. So let's go ahead and move to Tom. Tom, what opportunities have you seen at Good Neighbor Community Center to serve program participants differently?
Yeah, let me tackle the collaboration part of this, because I know we've all faced similar situations with our agencies. But around the time COVID came around, I remember that we quickly gathered together as the Cultural Centers Coalition, and we just started checking on each other, because that's about the time we needed a lot of support. So we were meeting weekly, and that led to a lot of meetings with, you know, our leaders in the community, the health department, and we were coming up with plans that were supposed to help the people that we serve. I would say one of the big ones was when we were able to help set them up with a free test. We did several tests for them, and a wonderful collaboration with the hospitals and the health department as well. I will also say that COVID has also taught us a lot, because we quickly also switched to a drive-through model for perishable food distribution and our food programs. And I know we had to close our classes as we figured things out. But right now, like Vi said, technology has been very helpful, because right now we have students who are able to attend classes, and those who cannot be with us, they are able to attend online at the same time. So we get best of both worlds, and which is a good thing, because a lot of people are not able to come this way, but they can still get credit if they're supposed to be in class. I will also say that we were also, around that time we was transitioning, because we had an issue with our big truck where we provide food. It's a huge truck, and we decided maybe we need a smaller van to help us, you know, pick up when we get someone who has maybe 30 pounds of food, we don't need to take, a 20-ton truck to go pick that up. So I was in the middle of getting a smaller van when the pandemic hit. So around March 18, I was scheduled to leave, and then everything started shutting down. But I was lucky enough they let me go. So I brought a van from Florida, and by the time I came back to Lincoln, I think everything had shut down. The good thing about having a smaller van like that has been that we were able to start delivering food to people who could not come to us, those who were at most risk. And we were also connected with the health department, and those who were diagnosed with COVID and could not, they were quarantined, they could call us and we would deliver food and other things that they needed. So those are some of the opportunities that I feel that we've learned. And talk about ALO providing us with free internet, and for us to decide to upgrade our phones. These things have become very important to make sure that we are connected with those clients that we serve. And this one maybe goes a little bit further than the COVID era. Our grandparents' room, I do realize that most of the agencies in our community do help parents and their children, but there's a group of people that we tend to forget, the grandparents from low-income families. This is an area that as a center, we've realized that it needs some assistance. So that's who we've been working with over the years. And it's really sad to see that we cannot even help everybody. We end up with a waiting list of over 60 grandparents that we can't get to. So that's another area I feel like needs to be utilized, and maybe other agencies that have a passion to help those low-income grandparents can accommodate them as well. So I will stop there and then maybe give Chris an opportunity to speak as well.
Thank you, Tom. And I so appreciate your note about collaboration. I think that's one of the neatest things about this community, and in particular, our community-based organization community, how you all are constantly pulling together and supporting one another, and thinking about the needs and ways to best meet needs as a community. So thanks for bringing that up. I have enjoyed watching that in all of my years in Lincoln. That's one of the most special things about our community. So Chris is still, I think, having some internet issues. So we're going to go ahead and we'll track back to her when she's able to rejoin us. So we'll go on to our next question, which I think is a really important one. And Suzanne, if it's all right, we'll start with you. What gaps, when we think about financial and economic stability, what gaps do you continue to see in our community?
Well, one of the things, it's kind of ironic to me, we finally have all these wonderful resources coming to our community related to housing, and many other resources as well. But and so we have all these individuals that we're working with, several partner agencies that are working on this as well. And we have funding for rental assistance and the case management support. But the biggest gap is finding safe, affordable housing. So our community is not well equipped to address that need. And this isn't new to Lincoln or many other communities and across the nation are facing this issue with the lack of affordable housing. But I find it to be quite challenging. And we will work. We have our landlord liaison project, which really, is geared towards identifying landlords and property managers that will work with our population that may have some poor rental history or some other challenges, maybe a criminal history, but they're working and getting back on their feet. And so our landlord liaison project will work to try and identify and find additional affordable housing. And I'm very thankful to the city of Lincoln and the mayor who has made that a top priority for our community as well. Let's just hope that the need and the resources align so we can get some people successfully housed. That's probably the biggest issue. I'm always concerned about access to treatment, addiction, and mental health services. We see many people that are not able to access those services, and so those are probably the biggest gaps that I see.
Thank you, Suzanne. Chris, we are glad you're able to rejoin us, and we are going to go to you. We are talking first about what gaps we continue to see in the community, and then if you would like to, we'd still love to be able to hear what additional opportunities you've seen within your programs to better or differently serve program participants.
Sure, thank you. I hope this will last. I don't know, this is the first time I've had this problem with Allo, so wouldn't you know? Yeah, let me talk a minute about the opportunities we've had. And the pandemic certainly has provided lots of challenges, but we were able to, fortunately, because of our building and because we have the space in our parking lot, take our food and diaper distribution outside and for a drive-through system. And that has just been very successful. We have added over 1,800 families to our roles. And so we are now probably on a monthly basis serving over 4,500 families with food. And average a week is maybe 1,700 families, and they're coming between 2 and 3 times a month. So that has been tremendous. The food bank has been able to get more food. USDA has been able to supply really good produce. So we're very happy that that is working. Now, here comes the winter, and I thought we should just distribute from our building, that people would drive up and our staff would go out and put stuff in their car, but they think that's too slow. So they're insisting on bundling up and standing out there in this not so great weather. We'll see how long they last. But we also moved to 5 days a week out of our building, and we closed our neighborhood distribution centers. When the pandemic is over, we will reopen neighborhood services. But that I was glad that we could pivot the way we did. Another opportunity we've taken has been with ELL. That was prior to the pandemic. Our English classes are really geared for people to get a job. And this is out of kind of, we have a cooperative thing with ResCare, the company, well, they've changed their names now, but they were the company that handles, has a contract with DHHS to work with people who are on government support to get work. And if they don't have English as a operative language, they come to us with the idea that their English gets just good enough to get a job. Well, often that means they leave maybe in the middle of what we would normally say they should go through, but they get it enough just to get a job. But then they find out, and the companies find out, that really the English isn't quite good enough to really do the work they want to do or to communicate with them. So we've started a program of going out into the work sites and teaching, and that was very successful until the pandemic. But now we have a company that has gotten back in touch with us, and I think they may be sending their workers to us as opposed to us going out there. But that was a good opportunity that we found. And I had one other here, and I think it was just with POP and also trade, looking for ways to enhance like the wraparound services for people in POP. And for trade, we recognize that our construction lab or our construction classes really were not getting people the jobs that we hoped they would. Part of it was people coming out of prison, particularly if they've been there quite a while. They're too old to build houses, and they need something that they can take through their lifetime, like welding, which you can weld when you're 60 years old, but you're not necessarily going to be framing a house. So we dropped our construction instruction, and we've added CAD drawing, and then an online thing called Tooling U, which is related to manufacturing design. And so those are things that people can do their entire lives. So I'm pleased with those opportunities. Just briefly on the gaps, I want to second what Suzanne said about housing. I hear more about that, and we really have very little, if anything, to do with housing other than providing, when we get emergency assistance funds, it's always going to housing and utilities, pretty much. And I hear stories from people, stories from our staff, many of whom are refugees themselves, about what horrible conditions they live in and their friends live in. So I am really, we really need to address that. The other thing I hear about, and again, it's not something we deal with too much, is mental health. And I asked a gentleman with ResCare at one point, I said, we were discussing people who successfully transition off of government assistance, who get stable jobs and are able to support their families, and then those who just struggle around that. And I said, what's the difference? And he said PTSD. I mean, it just came out like, and it can be, of course, people who are refugees who've come from violent areas, but it's also people born in this country who go through all kinds of different traumas and abuse and what have you. And, you know, I am not an expert in this, but I sure would, and there are people who know a lot more about it than I do. But I wonder if the loss of our community mental health services, what that's, you know, what impact that has had. And I think a lot of people are struggling when they maybe wouldn't have to if we had better services. So those are the things I'll add.
Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move next to Monica. Monica, what gaps are you continuing to see in the community?
Well, not surprisingly, I'm going to say some of the same things. We see a gap with our ladies and with, you know, just being in this field with healthcare. So most of the women at Fresh Start don't have healthcare, and so then that ties to inability to get services, both mental health and physical health services a lot of the time. We have a number of nonprofits providing some really wonderful programs, but there's just never enough, is more of what it is. So it's not that the programs don't exist, it's that there's not enough availability to meet the need. And so with healthcare, that's a big issue. So for mental health and for substance abuse, recovery, treatment, aftercare, for physical health, we've had women at Fresh Start that have diabetes that's been really hard to treat through healthcare providers. And it's also really hard to treat from some of those kind of standard recommendations with diet when you don't have enough money to really make sure you're not eating as many carbs, because carbs are cheap and fill you up. So that's what you have. So it's healthcare is a big issue for our ladies that impacts then employment and transportation and everything else. Housing has been brought up, affordable housing, and that's a tricky term, because when you're talking about affordable housing, that means something different to a lot of different populations. And what I'm talking about, and imagine it's what Susie and Chris are referencing, or we're talking about affordable housing where you can get an apartment for $700, not the affordable housing that is $1,000, or affordable housing in the sense of first-time homeowners. And all of those categories are also really important to us as a community. But when we're looking at the people that are struggling the most, affordable housing isn't first-time homeowners and some of those apartments that are being built. It's, I have a subsidy from Lincoln Housing Authority, and I need to find an apartment. If I'm a single person, I need to find an apartment for $500 a month for a single person. That's not easy to do in Lincoln, and there's not very many of them, and they're usually run down, and sometimes it's because the landlords aren't taking care of them, and sometimes it's one of the ways the landlord is working to keep the rent low is because they're not putting as much into it. So even the good landlords might have units that aren't in good repair. And then this becomes a cycle, because if you're in substandard housing, that affects your health, and you don't have health care. So then what are you going to do? So then you miss your job. So healthcare, and then that affordable housing. And that also ties to the living wage and the minimum wage, and being able to have a full-time job that actually pays for all of your expenses. there's the Low Income Housing Coalition does a study every year that's called Out of Reach that maps out for each state how many hours you'd have to work at minimum wage to be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment. And in Nebraska, the most recent study in Nebraska, you have to work 72 hours a week. So be able to afford a 2-bedroom apartment at minimum wage. So if you're a 2-person household and you both have full-time jobs at minimum wage, you're set. You don't have a whole lot extra, but you're at 80 hours instead of 72. If you are a single person living at Fresh Start, even if you're able to get a full-time job, it's not going to be, or you have to make $16.27 an hour in Nebraska. And it'll vary a little bit by Lincoln, Omaha, rural, but our ladies typically are not making $16.27. Most of my staff is not making $16.27. So that then ties to what housing they can afford and all those other things. So it's very much interwoven, and it's very much a endless cycle that they can't get out of because it all ties together. You have to be able to address all of those things for someone to really be successful. And there's gaps in each of those 3 areas and other gaps, but those are the 3 that we see as really being the hardest for them to overcome and for them to solve. And for us as the nonprofit sector and the helping sector, for us to be able to solve in the sense of having enough services for everybody that's out there, because we're all doing our part as a team, but there's only so much we can do with our resources. And so that's also why we're so thankful for the United Way and for all of you on the call. But those are the biggest gaps that I would mention is affordable housing, lack of health care, and that living wage.
Thank you, Monica. I appreciate you sharing that. Tom, we're going to move to you next for the questions. We have 2 questions left, and we have about 9 minutes left with our guests. So we're gonna have just a couple of folks answer this this next one, and then the remainder answer our final question. But Tom, what keeps you up at night?
For me, what keeps me up at night is I know there's a lot of opportunities here in Lincoln, and most of them have been highlighted today. Unfortunately, most of the people in our community that need the services are not aware about them. So that is what really keeps me up at night. On Tuesday, I was driving to go see the executive director at El Centro, and I had my 2 kids with me who were coming from school, and we were driving down Old Street. And I think about on 13th and Old, there was a gentleman that was homeless, and he had a quilt, and he was walking down the street. And I asked my daughter, "Hey, did you see that?" And she said, "Yeah, I saw that." And later on, when she was doing her prayers for the evening, she started praying for that guy, and she was asking that hopefully the guy found a place to sleep tonight, and hopefully he has some food. And that really caught my attention, that he's down there, he doesn't have those resources. We didn't know if he's aware about the resources that are available for food, for shelter and stuff like that. So that kept me asked. That's a question that keeps me awake. It's more like, how many people are out there that we do not see in our agencies, do need our services, but we can't get to them? So I will leave that to that question, but that's what really keeps me up at night.
I appreciate you sharing that, Tom. Vi, kind of a dual question for you here. What is keeping you up at night? And then also, if you would like to address the gaps question as well.
Sure. I would just mention that one of the gaps that I feel like has grown is that we are all experiencing the fact that many families who were once economically stable now need our services. That not only is need growing in the kinds of need, but also the numbers, and it's moving into those families who do not know how to access us, are not familiar with the kinds of services available to help them. And so I would say then on top of that, based on what keeps me up at night, is thinking about our employees as nonprofit employees moving into that group who now have the really extreme responsibility of assuring that our community's needs are met, but also experiencing personal needs for their family, whether it's related to income because of a loss of job for a spouse or partner, whether it's related to sickness, etc. We all respond to COVID in a very different way. And I think all of us can recognize the anxiety that we are exhibiting because of that. But for our employees who tend to be younger, tend to have younger children, and who are on the ground doing the direct work of meeting services, it's a huge responsibility to try to support them with the kinds of support they need. And I think that's where I really find myself puzzled and trying to come to better ways to do that.
Thank you for being willing to share that, Vi. In the handful of minutes that we have remaining, I want to end with this question because I know that as executive directors of community-based agencies, you all are always driven by hope. Hope for a better future for those that you serve, those that you're working beside, as Vi just illustrated, to make the community a better place. So I want to spend just the last handful of minutes here hearing from a few of you. What gives you hope? What continues to give you hope, or what is newly even giving you hope? And we'll start with Monica.
Well, we look for those little moments at Fresh Start. They might not seem like a big thing, but somebody learning how to use the bus system, somebody getting that first job, somebody, maybe they didn't get the apartment, but the landlord was willing to meet with them and talk to them about their history instead of just immediately judging them on paper. Those little moments are what give us hope, and what we try and focus on with the residents, to see that they can make progress towards their goals, and that these things can happen, and that there are good people in our community that will give them a chance. And that's the other thing that gives me hope outside of Fresh Start, is when I do hear about the community coming together and how that's going to help reduce homelessness, and people won't need to come to Fresh Start. We're always trying to work ourselves out of a job, right? Panelists, we're always trying to make it so our services aren't needed. And so as anytime we can inch closer to that, gives me hope. And when I see community coming together and breaking down some of those stereotypes, gives me hope for that better future for our residents and our community and our families and everyone here in Lincoln.
Terrific. Thank you, Monica. Suzanne, what gives you hope?
What gives me hope, our guests, the people that we serve, they're so resilient, and the things that they have to endure, just to get through the days. And they have kept me going during this last several months, the gratitude, the compassion they show me personally, our staff team. They know we're all in this together. That really is something that gives me hope. You all give me hope. The fact that we have such a collaborative, connected community of service providers. We're not in this alone. And then lastly, our staff, my team of workers at Matt Talbot, they all have been enduring this just like everybody else. We've had to modify quite a bit. Now we're staffed 7 days a week. We've had to make a lot of sacrifices in order to make that happen. And today, after this meeting, we're making a plan to open our dining room for the unsheltered homeless in early November as we prepare for the winter months, because we can't continue to do some of the outside services for the truly homeless anymore as the weather changes. So we've been planning and working towards this, and I'm so grateful to them, and they truly give me hope.
Thank you, Suzanne. Tom, what gives you hope?
Yeah, together with what has been said, I'll just mention the people who support us, people who are probably tuned in to listen to us at this point. The directors here will agree with me that we can't do this on our own. We depend on you guys. By giving to United Way, it eventually comes down to us, and we are able in return to help those who are in need in our community. So just that, looking forward to that support from our community has always been given me a lot of hope that we are gonna make it through all this. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you to all of you. We are at 1 o'clock, and we just got through our prepared questions, but you all had so much important information to share with us. So I just have to say, you all give me hope. You have been giving me hope as we've moved through the pandemic and long before that. I so appreciate the ways that you all work toward your mission of making life better for every person in our community. So a special thank you to all of you for taking time to share with our guests today what's happening within your organizations, how you are doing, and how we can continue to support you. So a special thank you for your time and your willingness to share with us today. And thanks to all who joined us for our roundtable today. We so appreciate the support that you all give us that makes this work possible. And just in quick closing, we do have another opportunity coming up and November 4th and November 19th to hear more about the work that's being done in health. And you heard that mentioned a lot by our panelists today. There's a lot of interconnectivity amongst the areas of support of education, income, and health. So we hope you'll join us then. Thanks, everyone.